Then I went to the to the Winter Music Conference in Miami. This was in the late '90s, I think. And I heard Dennis Ferrer play at a club. I can't remember the name of the club. It was a huge club too. Man. That dance floor flocked with women. And I said, you know, you can't think, when you're a DJ, you just can't think about yourself. That record was so fucking sexy. When you hear it, it is fucking with that bass, you know, Can You Feel It is a sexy song on its own. Slow, dun, 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 dun. And you had these vocals, Diamond, like with her amazing voice. I was like, you know, that's when I learned, you know what? I can't, if I'm gonna play, I gotta play music that the women want to hear and dance to. Can't think about yourself. That was a very valuable lesson that, you know, Dennis Ferrer taught me that he doesn't even know.
I'm ready. Today is June 5th, 2021. Who are we speaking with?
What's up? It's the Gomez.
House music in one word.
Feeling.
Do you want to expound on that?
Well, I would say soul. It's soulful music. Something you actually need to feel. A lot of people, for me, house music is soulful music.
What is soulful house?
Soulful house? It's music that takes you on a ride, something spiritual, something you feel like you're going to church. Yeah, it's pretty much something spiritual, something that takes your inner on a ride, on a journey.
Describe the moment when you fell in love with house music.
That has to be like the mid '80s when I think one of the first albums I ever bought. Well, no, even before that, I started hearing house mixes in the freestyle music I was buying, because I was big on, really, my first love was hip hop, then freestyle, the electro funk going into freestyle. Freestyle started having some of the early house remixes in them. I'm like, what the hell is house mix, or casa mix, they used to call them too. Back then it was called like also Latin hip hop. And I started hearing these what they call house mixes, and that's how I learned about the Chicago stuff coming in. Some of the New York stuff was coming out. So yeah.
And then, do you remember the first club you went to?
Yeah, that was No More East in Queens. It was a cool spot in Queens. Like it was like a local spot. I'm sure people came from all over, but it was a local spot. But they had good DJs. They had some of the best early freestyle parties and the first house music parties. I must have been like 17 years old. I wish I could have gotten earlier, but you know, Latin mothers are strict. I had one of them strict Latin mothers. So getting out the house, if I stay late, I already knew the wrath was coming when I got home. And on this particular night, I caught the wrath for staying out. I went partying without even telling my mom. Yeah, so that was an experience, man. It was like the first time, and this was even before the whole Terry. He was still doing freestyle, and then he started getting into the house, and that's when I started really getting into house music because of Terry, because he was using the same sampling methods and style that he was doing with the hip hop, and it was all sample galore house music, but it banged in the club. So that was my real introduction to house music. I like some of the Chicago stuff that was coming out, but Terry really took it to the next level, even though he was just sampling everybody else's music.
Do you consider yourself a DJ first or a producer first?
Yeah, I'm definitely a DJ. That's my first love. I'd rather be DJing than producing. I love to get behind turntables and make people dance. Maybe it's an ego thing, but I personally love to see people dance, and I personally love to see people dance from the music I'm playing.
And then talk to us about your approach to DJing. Do you prepare for a set? Do you read the crowd and then play them that? Do you feel your job is to educate? Do you feel your job is to entertain? Just talk to us about how you approach your DJing.
I do it by ear, whatever I feel what the crowd is doing. You can never really prepare for a gig because you don't know what the outcome is going to be or what the crowd's feeling. I've never actually tried doing a list of records. I'm really more of a risk taker. Sometimes they worked in the past, sometimes they bomb. But when they really work, man, it's like people like, it's like, wow, that really worked. And then you have the occasional bombs that don't really work. And, you tried it, but, it's what's important is you're playing the music and you're reading the crowd and you're playing off the reaction. You spot a couple of dancers and if they're feeling it, you feed off of them. It's like, okay, I know I think they're gonna love this next record because it's something that I did a little bit of dancing in my early house days, so I know what they're gonna feel. So it's definitely about reading the crowd, and I think that's the best way to play. You can't really make a list and say I'm gonna play this, and this because it might bomb. It may not be something that people are feeling. So it's definitely got to take a risk. That's what I'm about. Even if it doesn't work, but sometimes they do work. And it'll take people on a journey, on a ride, and they'll be feeling even better because it's just spur of the moment.
Tell us a time when you took a risk and it didn't work.
Oh, let me see. There was a couple of I think the big risk was taking when you're playing disco. When we used to do a disco party back in the days, and sometimes disco is it's not something you could ride two records with on for a long time. So you're trying to find the best spot to throw in a good record. You could have to slam it in or do a fast mix. And sometimes just the slams don't exactly work like they plan, like and actually it cuts the crowd's movement of dancing, the energy, and hey, sometimes they happen, but sometimes they do work. I come from a little bit of a hip hop mentality where you throw in a record at a right point. You don't always have to mix. And there's a lot of disco DJs that did that. I think Ron Hart, I used to listen to a lot of his mixes, and he was one that used to just chuck the record in at the right point. He didn't mix every disco record. So I come from that like old school of hip hop, throwing it at the right time, cut the record and like, chop it in, and it's just depends. But sometimes they work. You just gotta know where and when to throw in a record at the right time.
Expanding on DJing, how important is a residency in a DJ's career?
I think those days are long gone. I mean, it's either the residency or the ones that have residency are the ones that actually pretty much do their own parties. At least in New York, maybe in Europe, I'm sure there's a couple like some of them, maybe Miami, some have their own residency or resident, whatever. But the best parties are the ones that do their own. The DJs do their own party. You got Danny Cribbett, Timmy. You got to create your own party, your own vibe. I don't know what clubs those days of Sound Factory or Junior or those types of big clubs with the one resident. I think those are really a thing of the past. I can't name one in New York. Who's left? I can't name nobody in New York who a big club who has a resident these days. Not, aside from the fact that I'm not in New York anymore, but even when I was there, like, it's really most of the DJs who do their own thing. Timmy, Cribbett, Louie, Joe, whoever, Body and Soul, they do their own parties. Right now, I think as a DJ, you just got to do your own thing or at least get out there and socialize and get in people's faces and try to get booked.
Talk to me about mentoring. How important is mentoring for an early career DJ? And did anyone mentor you?
Nobody really mentored me, man. I mean, I remember I asked Ted Patterson once when we worked at the label. I asked him, how do you get to be play out in clubs a lot? And his exact words were just hang out with a big DJ. I guess when you hang out with someone who's out there, who's already experienced, who's out in the clubs playing, I guess you learn the ropes and hopefully you're waiting for you to get that shot. But as far as me mentoring anybody, the only mentoring I'm doing is maybe when it comes to production, and I won't even call it mentoring. I help people out when it comes to their production. I give them pointers, or if there's something that they send me as a demo, it may be good, but it's not something that I would put out personally for my label. So I'll send them, send it to this, send it to this other label. When it comes to production, I tell them what it needs. I've helped a lot of people that, from mix downs to how to work the vocals a little bit better, what to add to the music to make it to stand out more. But that's as far as that goes. I don't have the time or the energy to be mentoring too many people now these days, because I'm out here hustling myself.
Tell everybody about your record label.
My record label is Merecumbe Recordings. It's going into its 5th year already. Time flies. I actually started it while I was in Costa Rica. It was something, it's not even my first label. I started a label back in 2011, but I quickly learned that without having a name in production, who's going to pay attention to you? And so if no one knows you production-wise, why would they pay mind to your label? So I quickly cut that down, and I started working on production. I started trying to get stuff on. I started doing some deeper house music tracks, and I got some on wax. But I always wanted to do the soulful stuff, because that's what that's what I am. New York. That's what I was. Go out clubbing. That's what I did. Body and soul shelter. So that was me. So I started doing the soulful stuff, and in my mind, I put these goals in my head. I'm going to start produce. This was around 2016. I said, I'm going to bang out tracks for a year, get on the best labels, add weight to my name, and I'm going to start my label. And my label is going to be going direct with Track Source, and I'll get a distributor for the other stores. And that's what I did. I started my label, and I just really wasn't. It was really just I started as an outlet for my stuff, because I quickly learned when you're putting out your own stuff, you got to chase labels for statements, and let alone you're not even forget money. You got to chase your money down. You got to chase statements. So I was saying, let me start this label just to get my music out. But quickly, once you have a name, people see you on the charts, they want to be part of that. They want to be part of what's hot. So I started getting demos too, and I started slowly putting other people's music, and I built it out. And I knew how to run a label from back in the day, so it was just a matter of time before I actually build it up and eventually. But it's really about me. People want to be associated with someone who's making noise and someone who's always on the charts, and the fact that the label gets noticed a lot. Track Source gives me love, and I have a direct with Track Source, but it's all based, not that there's favorism, is that I'm putting out banging demos, I'm putting out banging tracks. At least most of them, I try to. There are a few that don't, but I try to put out good music. So that's what the label is doing. We're in our 5th year, and I feel lucky, and I'm blessed that people will send me their demos, and they trust, and I treat them good. I pay, I send statements. So that's where we are now.
How did you meet Ted Patterson?
Ted hired me as an intern back at the record label back in 94, I think, 93, 94.
Which label?
It was called Waako Records. He was the A&R, and I remember coming in, he had a nice set of DATs on his desk of the stuff that was coming up. He had Lenny Fontana, he had II Swing, he had Oscar G. He had a whole bunch of demos that they were ready to release. I was getting excited. By then I had stopped playing too much house music. It's funny because I was more into the hip hop. I was doing more hip hop back then, and reggae, dancehall, but I was still buying house records here and there. But it was just, I think by 94, the only place I was going to was Sound Factory and Shelter. But hip hop was blowing up in New York. So I was really doing that. Plus it paid. And then, that's how I met Ted. Ted unfortunately left after a couple of months from after I started. So me and this other dude that were there, we just took it over, doing the A&R and the promotion and stuff.
How long were you there?
I was there from 1994 to 2005, man.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a good run until the whole vinyl business tanked. And even then, I stretched it to 2005 because really it had tanked way before that. I would say around 2001, but really before that even. Once the digital sales, the digital, I actually remember exactly when the whole thing turned around. When the first computers came out with CD burners, that was it. That was around 99, maybe 98, when they came out to the general public. And you had the computers with the CD burners. Everybody started burning CDs with music for free, sharing them. Then eventually they were uploading them and they were sharing them through all these websites. That's when the whole business started tanking. When them CD burners came out, that was it.
Wow. What's the proper way to run a record label?
Proper way?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very generic general question because there's so many ways you could do it. I mean, you could either do it as a legitly, put out demos, pay, send statements. And there's labels that don't do that. They just put out and they just jerk people. I tend to do it the first way, like send statements, pay. I even send, even if it's $15, I send it. PayPal, I don't care. I don't do the whole $50. I won't send nothing out until $50 or withholding, like some distributors doing. And I'm sure even labels do it. Yeah, if you earn $15 off the record here, I want people to come back. I don't want people taking the demos to somebody else. They might have a banger. I want them to come to me first. And I get that a lot. I get people who come back to me even and they haven't even gotten statements for the first record because and I know it's based on word of mouth. They trust in me because they hear it. I'm sure it gets around. I know a lot of people talk about the label and they say it and they probably saying, yo, Duck pays. Yeah. So I think that's a problem. If you want a successful label, you got to pay. Even if it's $15, $10, I've paid $15, $12. It's not making me richer, but at least I'm getting the trust of somebody. Hey, at least Doug is sending good statements. And even though I only made $12, at least he's sending it. I'm going to send them my next demo. They might have a banger. So I know there's labels that they ain't even making any money because they keep most of it. And I gotta say, you can't trust the labels who are run by dudes who do this full time because they keep the money. They need that money. They ain't trying to pay nobody. They find every way to not to pay. People who have labels on the side. I started this label on the side, even though I'm doing it I can't say I'm doing it full time, but it is a big chunk of my time. I still pay. It ain't making me richer. It's not gonna make me richer. We're all doing this. I myself as a producer also want to see statements and I want to get checks and I treat people the same way I want to be treated.
That's a fair statement. Let's talk about money. And obviously don't share what you don't feel comfortable sharing, but realistically, can someone make a full-time living just producing house music? And like, sorry, go ahead.
Not soulful house music. Not anything. Maybe, yeah, and even the Afro, I don't even know if anybody, even the techier Afro, maybe if you're doing techno and you're doing the beatport style crowd, maybe. I'm sure there's quite a few doing it.
What's the average, if I were to start producing Afro house today or soulful house, and I put out a track, what can I expect in terms of sales or revenue for that track?
If you're not hitting the top 10, you ain't going to see much money.
Really?
Yeah. If you're not hitting top 10, it's like I try to put records that'll hit top 10. Otherwise, why waste my time? Of course, they don't know that they don't hit all top 10, but it takes time for me to put out to even to take a demo and deal with the artwork, deal with distribution, deal with promotion. So if it's not something that I think could hit top 10, I'm not going to mess with it. So if you hit top 10, you'll see some money. And I'm talking maybe if it stays in the top 10 for more than at least 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you might see anywhere close to $100 to $200, but you ain't making a living off of this. So you definitely want to, when you put out something, you definitely want to hit the top 10. Soulful house is a little harder because the soulful house genre is just a mixed bag. You got the garage style, you got the disco style going in there with vocals. I'm like, this is not really soulful, but so it's harder to get in the top 10. But you'll see a nice pretty penny. I mean, But again, if you're sharing the money with the singer, then you and the label. I mean, it's just definitely just money that you get in, that you get to maybe buy some records or buy some music or maybe buy a plugin. You're not gonna pay, yeah, you're not gonna make any money to pay any bills really, but yeah.
Walk us through the process of producing and releasing a record from beginning to end. So you
So
have an
digitally, right?
digitally, yeah. So talk to us about like from how do you get the idea? How long does the process take? You know, when do you get the artwork involved? When do you decide if you're going to get a singer involved? Do you produce it on your computer? Do you rent a studio? You
Oh,
know,
so you mean me personally, if I want to put out one of my own stuff, one of my own records?
just in general, either your own or something that you license from me or something like that. Like, you know, just what I'm looking to get at is like basically the end-to-end process in terms of time and
Mm.
process and work effort.
It's not. It could be a matter. It could be done in a week. I mean, if someone sends me a demo, I like it. I send the contract. Let's say the same deal. The next day, they sign it back. They send me the master. If it needs, usually nowadays they send me the mastered version. Sometimes once in a while they might send me a pre-master, which means I have to master it myself. So that might take some extra time. But if it's fully mastered, then start the artwork process, and then they send it to them, and if they approve it, and then I just upload it to distribution, and then track source I have it direct, so I could, let's say today's Sunday, Saturday, I could have it on by Monday for a release. I do pre-orders, so it could be on pre-order by Friday. So in a week, I could get it up in track source for pre-orders, and distribution will be, I'll give them another month. So it's pretty simple and it's pretty fast these days. It's not as when it was vinyl, that took way longer, because that really took mastering and the shipping of records and all this stuff, promotion, and then the promotion. Then that's just, I put them up on SoundCloud. I sent a private link to the DJs on my list, and that's it. It's so simple these days.
Talk to us about your new podcast.
Raisa is something I started with Antonio Ocasio. It was just something that I was thinking about doing it. Actually, he was thinking about doing a podcast. And we just decided to let's do something about, actually, the catalyst was, these articles came out about Afro House. And I don't want to name them, but one of them left out the whole 90s pretty much. And then the other one, they pretty much got almost everybody, but there were some people that were left out. So we felt like, why don't we start a podcast and try to talk to the people that are being left out, the voices that are being left out, and talk a little bit more, get more in deep about, we really wanted to talk about Afro, but I think eventually we want to spread out a little bit more. But the Afro music was the spark, because a lot of the facts going around these days is that it started, in South Africa, Afro House. And really, Afro, the term, the Afro music, when it comes to Afro House music, it was banging in New York already, in parts, some in Chicago. But it didn't even stem from some of the tribal early stuff from New York. But so me and Antonio were like, let's try this, let's start a podcast. He wanted to start one. He was thinking about it for a long time. And I even have another idea to start one myself for something else. But so we said, yeah, let's start it. So we just started. I came up with the name Raíces because it means roots in Spanish. And I thought that was a perfect name. So we're trying to get to the roots of the music, the roots of everybody who we're interviewing. And when it's mostly about the Afro-Latin genre and house music. In our first interviewer, the first one was actually just us two. He didn't, I actually said, why don't we interview you, Antonio? And he didn't really want to go. He felt he didn't want to be the first interview. So I said, right, let's just us two jam out about music, talk about it, and vibe on it. So he was cool with that. So we did that. Then we had Mickey Affleck, which I thought was a good first choice, because she's not only because she's a woman hustling hard in this male predominant game, And she was good, man. She's a hustler. She has her own label. She's a DJ. She's out there. She has a lot of history in New York when it comes to clubbing and DJing and people she knows. So I thought that was a great person to hear. And then we had Frankie Feliciano, humble guy, and that was really fun. That was good, man. So that's what we're doing. That's what the podcast is about. We're not trying to interview everybody in the business. We just want to select a couple of people who we feel need to be heard, who have some kind of roots in either Afro or Latin. And that's pretty much it. Man.
What would you say are some of the...
By the way, it's not even a podcast. We're only doing it. It's a YouTube, so we call it the Vibecast because we don't even put it up on YouTube, on iTunes.
I love that. I love that. What would you say are some of the early Afro house tracks?
Well, when it comes to house music, there was a...
Like for me, I think of is Coro, but there's probably the stuff before that.
Yeah, there was some stuff even before that in the late 80s, but also a lot of people don't maybe not know. Disco had a lot of African roots also. A lot of there was a groups like Congas. There's a bunch of records that had a lot of African influence music in it. And I think that probably stemmed over into house music. Of course, the early house music was just a couple of producers that didn't have the money to do all those big bands and everything. But I think it was just a matter of time. Once the tribal stuff came out, even before Quarter Quarter, I can't remember the top of my head, there was a couple of tracks in the late 80s that had a lot of Afro influence. And then the tribal stuff came out in New York. But and here's the thing, people when they think of tribal, there's people that think tribal like the heart of Victor Calderon style. No, there was Coro is a perfect example of a tribal record. First tribal records, Motherland. This I'm losing my memory. I can't remember all the songs, but yeah, there was a lot of records that before it went to the heart of Victor Calderon, harder Junior Sanchez sound. Before that style of tribal house, those records were called tribal, Coro and all that. So, and I think eventually it was just a matter of time before people wanted to expand on the tribal and the African and the drums and add live music. So that's when it's in the mid to late 80s, mid to late 90s, that's when the music started expanding, growing. You had dudes like Antonio and Frankie Valentine in the UK, and you had labels like Spiritual Live, Joe and all. That's when they started, adding real liveness to the music. Louie. Even though we have arguments with Antonio about Louie, because he says that he thinks Louie maybe did it doing the Afro when he was doing solo in the early 2000s. But I think he had the influences in the New Yorican album. He had the Latin jazz and all that stuff. So that was a lot of mix of Latin and African stuff. So.
No, that's a fair point. COVID, what effect has it had on your musical career, and what effect has it had on our scene?
Well, my musical career, I've only had more time to make music. In my actual life career, I lost work. So right now I'm just hustling music and helping my wife with her business. I lost gigs last year. I was supposed to go to Spain and a couple of other things, and I have a couple of other things happening now that hopefully will turn out. But my wife doesn't want me to fly unless I get the vaccine, so hopefully we'll see what that it might happen this week. But here in Costa Rica, it's very slow. The vaccine is only available for like the older elderly crowd and people with pre-existing conditions. But yeah, I mean, I've expanded the fact that I don't have actual real work. I've just been concentrating on my wife's business and music. And no gigs right now, but I have some prospects in the near future. We'll see what happens. But hopefully that'll pan out.
Talk to us about dream collaborations. If money and connections are no object, who would you like to collaborate with?
I'd love to collaborate with some singers like Sade, Alicia Keys, Who else? Yeah, I can't. Those two are definitely my first top ones. Uh, yeah, I think those two are definitely my real, because I love the way they sing. They're very I think they're very original. You know, no one really sounds like Sade. Alicia Keys, I love her voice. I think the fact that she could sing, write, play keys and everything that would be, and I'll add some my flavor. I think we'll come out with some bangers. Let me see who else. I had thought of somebody else, but I just can't remember. Maybe something with someone like an Afro house track, but with a Missy Elliott type of vibe. I'll do some drumming, some tracking, you know, because she does have that house flavor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those three are definitely my top three.
What's the secret to your production? You consistently put out bangers. Consistently.
I think it's just I think it's a fact because I have time to make music. I'm not trying, and it seems like I'm putting out a lot of music. Is I guess because I'm putting. Plus, I know how to use my time. It's not like I'm putting out loads of my own music every. I only do one of my own a month on my label. I don't put out my music on anybody else's label. I only do remixes for others. So I'm only doing one of my own for my label a month, but I consistently get remixes. And I guess just that, you know, I've been, it's not like I'm a young buck. I've been in this game for so long. I know, you know, even though I haven't been clubbing for a while, I know what people like. And I think the secret, it's not really a secret. I think you just got to make the girls dance. Girls love drums. Girls love those vocals. Combine both with some banging beats, some banging congas, drumming, and the right vocal. I think a perfect example is Perry X. I had two records with her, and that just happened out of like, you know, the first one was actually a dude by the name of Stefan on Instagram hit me up. He had her vocals. Well, he took my drums and laid them under her R&B track. And I said, well, send me the track. Let's talk to her and let's see if we could bang it out. And because the drum pattern that he was using was off a record that I did, and it wasn't really working with her vocal, with that track, that verse. So I did complete new drums, and the record band, I think it was one of the best, the top Afro records of last year. And it was no secret. It's just the song itself, the girl was singing something that other girls could relate to. And she has a great voice, very R&B-ish. And I just added drums and then some music and a synth solo. And then Making Moves picked up a second one of hers, and they asked me if I could remix it, and here we are again, top 10. And still top 10 after a couple of weeks, or like 3 weeks or a month. So it's not, you know, we got to make the women dance. I think if you make the women dance, the DJs have no choice, but even if they don't like it, I know for a fact that Making Moves, and I know it because I saw this, I know that this record of this remix I did is not your cup of tea. And he agreed, but you know, that's what girls want. The rest will follow. DJs play what the women want. Some of them don't know that yet, but eventually they'll find out. You got to play for the women. You know, it happened to me once a long time ago. I'll go into a story. I think it was Diamond Life. There was a bootleg out that did the music from Mr. Fingers. Can you feel it? Dun, 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 dun. And they put Diamond Life vocals. Like, yo, why are they doing this? It's like just a mash. It's not even a read. It's just a mashup. And I mean, it sounded good, but I was like, whatever. And then I went to the to the Winter Music Conference in Miami. This was in the late '90s, I think. And I heard Dennis Ferrer play at a club. I can't remember the name of the club. It was a huge club too. That dance floor flocked with women. And I said, you know, you can't think, when you're a DJ, you just can't think about yourself. That record was so fucking sexy. When you hear it, it is fucking with that bass, you know, Can You Feel It is a sexy song on its own. Slow, dun, 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 dun. And you had these vocals, Diamond, like with her, with an amazing voice. I was like, you know, that's when I learned, you know what? I can't, if I'm gonna play, oh, I gotta play music that the women want to hear and dance to. Can't think about yourself. That was a very valuable lesson that, you know, Dennis Rivera taught me that he doesn't even know.
That's a great fucking story.
Yeah, so that's, you know, that's when I, you know, so back to the thing about me, you know, I'm trying to put music that I use live instrumentation, I use live musicians, drum, I have a great keyboardist who does a lot of who helps me out, does a lot of my stuff. And if you want to, I feel like if you really want to take your production, you need to work with live musicians. I hear a lot of music done by dudes, and yeah, they're okay. But I'm like thinking, if you had a musician who could really do this for you, it'll be a lot more better. It's not that, you know, you can find musicians, you could throw a rock and hit a musician these days. They're all over, they're on Fiverr, they're everywhere. You just got to find someone who's good, who you could work together with. And that's so I have someone who's great. And he helped me take my production to the next level. When I tell him I want something, he does it, and he comes and pretty much knows what I need and what I want. And I just come out with the rest. And people might say, well, you're not doing your own thing. Everybody uses musicians. You can't take your A game, if you can't get that A game if you're not using live music, if you're doing soulful house music or even Afro, some of the Afro. It's no shame in my game. You gotta use musicians, keyboardists, or if you want to use some other live stuff, use everything from accordions to drummers to keyboardists to you know, sax players and all that stuff. So that's definitely, it's just definitely something I love to do, is work with musicians and help my music you know, expand and get out, not just the same old, everybody samples drum loops online. Take the same, like, you know how many demos I get with the same drum loops? And it's funny because me and Mr. Eclectic, Maurice from Pascal Records, we joke around because we get demos, and we both get the same demos sometimes at the same time from the same people. And I've already checked them like 3 demos from, and I said, yo, check this out. It's the same drum sample, same drum loop, same drum pack. They just use the same thing over. I'm like, it's just, come on. Buy some, at least if you're gonna buy drums, buy some drum shots and and just work them. Do your own drums, make your own drums. Get a live musician, get a live percussionist. Tons of them, tons of conga players, percussionists that you can get and to add to your drums. That's what I do. So, you know, making music has its nowadays it's has a plus and minuses. Anybody can make it. That's the plus, but then the minus, everybody can make it. Anybody can make it. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. Doesn't sound good all the time, but
that's really good. Speaking of making the girls dance, did you meet your wife at the club?
No, I actually met my wife. It's funny. I don't know if you know Frankie. He used to work at Subliminal. Frankie, what's his last? Frankie. Yeah. They call him Mayimbe.
Yeah, what happened to him, man? I miss him.
Oh man, I don't know. Before we left New York, we hooked up and we had lunch. But he's not a big social media dude. He's not on Instagram. He might be on Instagram, but he doesn't post. He's not on Facebook for sure. Mm-hmm. He is on Instagram, but I don't even think he posts anything. Mm-hmm. He hit me up when my team lost, the Steelers. When was it? A year ago, whatever. Mm-hmm. And he loves to joke. He loves to get on my shit. So we used to chat a lot online when I worked at the label, and I think he was even still at Subliminal. And he sends me a video. We used to do Downshift. I used to do a radio show. Downshift Radio was one of the first video streaming shows online back in the early 2000s. So me and Frankie would come over. We would invite Frankie. He came over to play a lot with us. And he sends me a video of someone doing a show on Downshift, and it was my wife. It was Terry. Back then she was going by DJ Loca. I said, okay, so I'm gonna do. I told Frank I'm gonna invite her to do my show. So I did that, and the rest is history. She came to my show, and I asked her out on a date, and that's it. That's how we met.
Wow. So
I kind of made the first move. Yeah.
Nice. You're living in Costa Rica now. Multiple part question. How did you land there? And do you miss the scene in New York?
How did we land here? It was 2014, and my wife had her own studio gym. Okay, so back then, I don't know if you remember, there was were you still in New York in 2014?
I left around that time.
There was a lot of even the year before, there was quite a few storms, like Hurricane Sandy, you know, that was knocking out power in Manhattan. That was the first time I ever saw no lights at all in Manhattan since like 1979 when we were young, when the lights went up. And we drove into work, and it was like, it's like a surreal. It was like nobody in the streets, no lights were working. I had to drive, and I had to look both ways to make sure just to drive across the street. We went to her job to make sure everything was fine. And eventually it turned out that every time it used to storm hard, and it was a lot of storms happening, nobody was coming to the studio to work out. People were still paying, but she was there by herself, and it just came out. She got to the point that she didn't want to do it anymore. She was just tired, and the rents were going up. We owned a condo in downtown Brooklyn, and everything was going up. You know, parking in the garage was going up. There was a charge in our mortgage bill for the building they were fixing the facade. That they tacked that onto so you know, we just decided, let's just make a move. She loved Costa Rica because I had family here. My mom used to live here. She passed away a couple of years ago. My uncles and my aunt lived here, and they moved away. They moved back to Florida because they're older now. When we came to visit them in 2008, my wife loved Costa Rica. So she had a plan. She even has a post, I think in 2012, where she was saying, we're going to move to Costa Rica or something. She already had this in her mind. When she sets her mind to something, it happens. And I didn't know that she was setting this out. She had it in her mind. And it just happened. We said, all right, let's pack up. I was hesitant at first because I was afraid. You know, I'm a Leo. I'm like, I stay in my home base. That's me. I'm all about New York. I never thought I'd leave New York. But it came to a time, you know what? I'm already in my 40s back then. And I was tired of the hustle too, man, going to work. The only good thing about work is that I actually got to drive to work. I was tired of the subways too. But we just said, let's just be out. I said, all right, I took a chance. My job at that time said, fine, you can work from home. That's fine. You can work from Costa Rica. We don't care.
What was your job?
I was doing online marketing, even up till the pandemic started. Online marketing. I handled the website I did all the big major tour companies with the marketing and the website. I did City Sites, New York Sightseeing, Gray Line, goer, and then the one I was working at when we left was NYC Airporter. So I know New York City tourism transportation like the back of my hand. So they said, fine, you can work from Costa Rica. And then I got another account, another tour company. So I was like, it's like the universe is telling me, here's more for you. Go, leave New York. It's like, okay, I'm coming home. I'm coming to Costa Rica with a big money every month. Let's just do it. We sold our condo in 2 weeks. Downtown Brooklyn was blowing up. Wow. It's just, now I hear it's just, back then the hotels were popping up. There was new buildings popping up. The mall was popping up again. We were right in the middle of Metro Tech area, 365 on Bridge Street. So we sold our apartment like this. We put it on the market 2 weeks. Not even the first person that came to see it, they bought it. And they bought it just to rent out because they knew the rental market was hot. They bought it just to rent out. And we made a killing. We made a lot more than what we paid. So it was just like the universe telling us, here, there's more, there's no excuses to be out. You know what I mean? So we did that. We just landed here. And the reason we landed to this part of Costa Rica is because we had a friend who had a friend. And they hooked us up with a real estate agent, and they helped us out a little bit. And that was it, man. And then what was the second part of the question?
Do you miss club life in New York?
That I miss that among other things. I miss the food.
Yeah.
I mean,
I took that for granted.
Yeah.
Food. Yeah.
And it's funny, I was talking to somebody the other day, Tony LeBron. He was saying that he's afraid to leave New York for that same reason. the convenience of having everything by you, going to the store at 3 a.m. in the morning, to the bodega, buying. But you learn to adapt, man, because yeah, food here is not that great. But if we want food, one of the things I missed was pizza. You know, being a New Yorker, I miss going to, like, when we lived in Soho, I used to go to Ray's Pizza right there on Prince Street. Man, every time I came home from work, I'd on my way, walk from the subway, going to the house, to the apartment. I would stop at Ray's and get a slice, just walking down the street. And then when we lived in Brooklyn, I could go anywhere to get pizza. But now here, luckily, 45 minutes from my house, it's a drive, 45-minute drive. Some dude from Brooklyn decided to open up a pizza shop, and he's really good. New York flavor. So, I mean, the convenience is not there anymore. And especially where I'm at, I'm more in the southern part of Costa Rica, which is two and a half hours from the city, San Jose. So there's nothing around here when it comes to, like, department stores, electronic stores. You know, we're lucky that we have a big supermarket that has a lot of the gringo stuff, the American stuff. But when it comes to convenience, I mean, you have to adapt. And that's what happens when a lot of people come to these places. They come here and they can't get used to this lifestyle, and they move back, or they get bored, and then they move back. When they think they're going to retire, and then they find out there's nothing to do here. You already had enough of the beach, you already had enough of the jungle, so they get tired. And some people come here to retire, and then they don't retire. They start businesses. They open up a restaurant when they shouldn't be opening restaurants because the food is horrible. But that's how we landed to this part. And that's how we landed to Costa Rica. And that's, we've been blessed, knock on wood, we came with my dog, and everything's been good so far. And the thing that helped us a lot is because I speak Spanish. It would have been that's another reason people move. It's kind of rough to navigate this process of residency, and even just buying stuff at the supermarket, and you don't speak the language, it could get a little tough. But luckily we're in a high tourist area. So a lot of the locals, a lot of the Costa Ricans speak both Spanish and English here. But yeah, so that's how we landed here.
What's next for Doug Gomez?
I wish I could answer that, man. Right now, I'm just taking it day by day. I'd love to start traveling again. I'm sure everybody wants to start traveling again. I got some gigs. One is in Colombia, where I'm actually from, but I never actually lived. So that might happen next month. But the thing is, Colombia is going through some turmoil right now with the strikes and everything. So they're trying to see what's going to happen with that first. I did want to go to the States. We were talking about they were trying to book me for Atlanta, then maybe North Carolina, but it's just the money's not there enough to cover my flight. I'll be sleeping it might cover my flight, but I'll be sleeping on somebody's floor and no food. So that's not ideal. So I really want to go back to Europe and play. Let's see, hopefully maybe the Spain stuff will come back, and we'll see what happens.
So a friend of mine told me, who's not in the scene, house music doesn't make sense. And this is what they said. They said, when they go to parties, everyone is eccentric, right? At least that was their observation. This is somebody completely not in the scene at all, right? Like a straight person, just like 9-to-5er, And when they hear about the economics, they're like, it doesn't make sense. You produce this music, soulful house audience is so small. Like, why do people still produce this? Why are people still involved in this scene? Why do the people still engage with that? What would you say to them?
I said, we do it because it's something we love. It's for the love. I mean, and that's what makes it unique. Why do you want music where everybody's the same? It's eccentric for a reason, because it brings people from all walks of life, from all races, all backgrounds, all sexualities, from straight to gay to whatever. It brings people together. You're in a club and you see so many different kinds of people together. That's what makes it unique. And I think this is one of the few genres that does that. I mean, yeah, hip hop, you'll have parties, but it'll be mostly, you probably have lots of gay people, but they're not really out unless it's a gay club. And house music party, there are people who are out. They're not afraid to be out. And you have straight people, gay people, Black people, Latin people, white people. That's one of the parties that, you know, like Body and Soul New York, that's one of the parties that's what made it unique. Because it was so eccentric, so many different styles, so many different people, the music. So people don't understand that. And yeah, there's no big money coming from this music, but like I said, we do it for the love because it's something that brings people together. That brings us, it's something that we feel in our hearts and our souls. And if they don't understand that, it's just because they didn't grow up in that environment. Music really is it's largely about your environment, really. You know, some people in the Midwest or middle America who never experienced a club like that in New York, they might think, okay, well, I don't get it, but that's why a lot of people they move from those areas, they go to New York or they go to LA because you know how many people haven't done that, from artists to musicians, because they don't get that they can be themselves in Middle America, wherever the hell they're from. They can be themselves in New York at a club. It could be whoever they want to be. And I think that's what makes house music unique, because it's all about us. It's all about being yourself. Self-expression, just letting yourself be out there, being free.
Last question. What do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy. I think that I brought good music. Hopefully, you know, my music will last for a long time after I'm gone. Hopefully, when people find a track of mine, they're like, yo, this track is dope. Like years after I'm gone, then they'll start searching for more of my stuff, and they'll find a whole catalog of stuff that they do. Hopefully, you know, I'm not going to put myself up there with some of the greats that are gone, but hopefully I'll get, you know, they'll think of Doug Gomma's tracks. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he used to bang out some tracks back in the days. I think that's about it, man. I don't really have I want to show people more about the DJ side of it. Hopefully that will start that up again. But I know I love to come back to New York and playing some parties. And that's one thing I miss about New York. But yeah, I think that would be my legacy. Just that I put out some good music. At least I tried.
Awesome. Those are the questions that I had. Is there anything else that I didn't ask that you wanted to cover?
Let's see. We talked about my podcast. We talked about the label. We talked about the music. Oh, I'm starting a Twitch channel. Everybody's doing Twitch these days. And I think it's just it's another vehicle to not only get your music out, it's also fun. Yeah, you may not be playing to, I can't come up and start comparing myself to a Louis Vega who has like 500 people in his channel. But hey, even if it's 20 people, 10 people, if they enjoy my music, it's fun. And you can actually make money on Twitch. So I think it's fun. We might even get into it tonight with my wife. My wife is doing it now with me too. And it's just fun for us to both get on and start playing with, you know, she brings a different vibe. And we actually did it yesterday and people enjoyed it. They were loving it. You know, we have fun together. So it's just something that, you know, I'm a little late because the Twitch thing with the DJ started way before, and I really got hot when the pandemic started because nobody could go out and play. Everybody was stuck at home. So, but I couldn't stream back then. There was a whole year that I had no internet. I had very little bit of internet, enough to stream, not enough to stream, but enough to just to open web pages and view, because when the pandemic started, our internet provider at that time closed down without telling anybody. They just closed up shop. So we were fucked. And we did our best we could, you know, just working. And that happened, and then I lost my work, and so it was a hot mess. So I couldn't really stream at all for a whole year. And then we just finally installed fiber into the community here where I'm at. So that took a whole year. to wait for that. So now that we have, you know, the fiber optics, we're good. So now I could stream. You know, I'm late to the game, but hey, we're having fun. Another little bit of money that comes in helps. It's just fun playing for people, even if it's only 10, 20 people, whatever it is. As long as they enjoying the music, we play like it's 100, 200, 500 people. That's what's important, man. You gotta play like if you know, even if it's just one person, just play. If they're enjoying your stuff, do it. Some people are having good, you know, some people are having some great shows right now. Louis won, David Morales is having a good show. It's a lot of big dogs that are really killing it on Twitch. And then there's some people that don't want to get on Twitch because they think they're too good for it or whatever. And there's some people that they really can't navigate the Twitch streaming because they have to have an audience in front of them to really feel the energy. But it's about interacting. You know, if you got to interact with the people even on the chat, you know, feed off that little bit of chat energy. So yeah, so I think that's it. And what else I got coming up? Just hustling music, more tracks, more remixes. And I have another label called Afro Raíces, which I started doing at the start of the pandemic, and that was a mess. But I think now.
Merecumbe.
Hmm?
How was that different from Merecumbe?
I wanted to concentrate when I started. I wanted to concentrate on the Beatport crowd, but that wasn't really. It wasn't really working too well. And it's starting. The pandemic started, and I lost my internet. So trying to run two labels with no internet was. Let me tell you, I had to go to my friend's house to do everything from his house. So now that I have internet, I'm able to start it. I'm just going to focus on the difference is going to be. It's going to be mostly Latin music. It could be Afro Latin, whatever, but it's more Latin inspired. Like more towards the salsa, maybe cumbias, whatever, but it's definitely more Latin inspired music. I have a new one coming out with a collaboration with Charro. She's in Puerto Rico right now. She got hold of a band. Really dope song, salsa record. So we're going to be releasing that next week. I have a collaboration with an amazing salsa singer from Puerto Rico. Her name is Ocha Horta. She's very well known in the salsa world. So I have a record with her. And yeah, so I'm gonna put that on Afro Raisa. So like I said, it's gonna be mostly on the Afro Latin, mostly Latin side. And yeah, and I started my Bandcamp, mostly my stuff, some of the label stuff, but I'm gonna be putting more of my stuff up there. Not to compete with Traxsource, but once I release it on Traxsource, I'll put it up on Bandcamp just to get some other people to expose it more. Because not everybody likes to go to Traxsource. So. So yeah, start my clothing line back up, and that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I will be in touch when this goes live.
Thank you, Moreno, so much.
I love your music.
Thank you.
Putting out hits, and yeah, we'll talk soon.
Thank you, brother.
All right, take care. Have a good night.
Peace, bro. You too, man.